And we're live. Welcome to Pardon My Disruption. I am Alan Berkson. I'm the Director of Community Outreach for Freshdesk, and I'm joined, as always, by Jonathan Yarmus, aka Dr. Disruptive. He's got his coat on. The doctor is in the house.
Ready to go.
So
we're coming live. Come on.
We are broadcasting live from the Stanford Innovation Center in
beautiful downtown
Stanford, Connecticut. No windows open today. It's pretty dark, so you can't say if it's like sunny outside, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Well, you only came in 15 minutes ago. I don't think there's been a radical weather change.
Is that one of our topics, radical weather change?
That's politically charged.
So we're here the second Friday of every month. Our next show will be on September 11th. We'll have to think about an interesting theme for that.
Yeah, that's, I think there's a big data element discussion around that, and we'll save it for next month. But yeah, that is a sobering day.
So I have to start this off by saying that I was at the Mets game yesterday, and that's right. And one thing I have to say is, you can't see it on my skin, but my seats are normally in the shade at 1 o'clock. The game started at 12. So I made
you got an hour of sun?
It was a tactical error. And so if you see me looking a little red today, it's because
you've got the farmer's tent.
I've got the farmer's tent. Very nice. But it would not be appropriate to start the show without saying that the Mets are 11 games over 500 and in first place.
By 4.5 games.
The last time they were 11 games over 500 was 2010.
I thought it was earlier this year. They started quick. But
they were 11 games over 500? Yeah.
Yeah, because they had that win.
Yes. At this point in the season. So, should we talk about the Jets?
No.
Although anybody out there, apparently Jonathan Yarmus is looking for a new team.
Yeah, I'm a free agent sports fan. I've been alive since before they were the Jets. They were the Titans. I remember Earl Christie, and that it's like I am just so sickened by the history of this franchise. But we can't talk. To me, there's an interesting discussion about the Mets, given that the whole Wilmer Flores thing. When's the last time you saw a ball player crying on the field because what fans in the ballpark were telling him about social media? That the fact that he had been traded was all over social media, and that he found out about it because fans at the ballpark were yelling at him in the on-deck circle saying, it was nice seeing you've been traded.
And yet, apparently, there is crying in baseball.
Yes, and to good outcome. It's one of the things.
Every time he comes up, he gets this ovation.
Yes, but because he was human, and that's rare, at least in sports.
It isn't bad. and two players wanting to play on a team that much. And he really didn't want to leave.
He had been a Met. He signed when he was 16, so it was about a third of his life has been spent as a Met. It's pretty depressing at some level, but a whole other matter.
All right, so we have our usual array of topics. We have a pet peeve. We have quote of the month. We don't have any kudos this time.
Oh, I think
maybe we have a kudo.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. At least. Some people would have it as a kudo. Some people would probably have it as a pet peeve.
Yeah. But to get us started off, we have a milestone, an anniversary.
Yeah.
And for us old fogies.
Some older than others.
Some older than others. And yes, you'll always be older than I am.
Yeah. Yes. 34 years ago.
Yeah.
34 years ago, this past Wednesday, IBM launched its original IBM PC. With an 88 microprocessor, no hard disk. Took them.
Wasn't it 8086?
No, it's the 8088 was the first one. The 8088 was an 8-bit processor. The 8086 came later as a 16-bit processor.
There was that big box.
Yeah. No hard disk. It took 3 years for them to introduce the XT with a hard disk, I believe. Or was the AT&T 84?
But it
was several years.
But it's remarkable from a trend point of view because at the time there was there was there were no standards for personal computers.
Right.
And the term IBM compatible PC.
Well, IBM made some really interesting decisions that some people would argue that IBM rules to this day, but they decided they needed to get to market quickly. And the way they got to market quickly was by using standard off-the-shelf components. So they went to Intel for microprocessors, they went to Microsoft, and this is one of the great stories of history. IBM was shopping around for an operating system.
Oh, yeah.
At the time, Digital Research with CP/M was the leading operating system provider for personal computers. And as the story goes, and there's been some contesting this, but IBM went to the people at Digital Research, with the idea of licensing CP/M for use on their PC. And it was a beautiful day in the Pacific Northwest, and the Digital Research people were out flying or doing something other than waiting for the IBM people to show up, and they stood the IBM people up. At the time, there was this little company called Microsoft. At the time, it was Micro capital S Soft,
Right.
who was a provider of the BASIC language interpreter. Microsoft was one of the providers of BASIC on the Apple II, and they went to Microsoft and said, we're interested in licensing BASIC, and while you're here, do you have an operating system? And to Microsoft's eternal joy, they said yes, when in fact the answer was no. They didn't have an operating system,
Right.
but there was this little thing called PC-DOS, and, a small little startup, and the company that was making it, Microsoft, went to these guys and said, we'd like to buy your operating system. They didn't say we'd like to buy it because we're about to license it to IBM for gazillions of dollars and dominance of the computer industry for the next 30 years. They just said, we'd like to buy it. And so the PC-DOS guys thought, we finally found a sucker. We've got this stupid little operating system that's got no market share, no presence, and we can't do anything with it. Sure. And they sold it to Microsoft. Microsoft licensed it to IBM. Stroke of genius, they licensed it to IBM, retaining for themselves the right to license it to everybody else. And here we are 34 years later, and we've got a new version of an operating system from Microsoft.
Yes, that was a great transition.
Thank you.
Were you ever like a DJ or something?
Back in the days with turntables.
That was a good mix.
Yes, good seg.
Good segue, I like it. Windows skipped a version. I'm taking a page out of the plenty of predecessors, Oracle among them. Just like if we come out with something bad, let's just skip the next one.
Right. And there were all sorts of, is it because 9 in German? Do you want to do the upgrade to 9?
Right. That's like the what was it?
The Nova.
The Nova.
The Chevy Nova.
Chevy Nova, right.
Trying to sell that in South America.
So we have
Nova, no go.
So we have Windows 10.
In the wild.
But the whole market for OS has changed.
I made the argument some years ago that Windows 7 was the last desktop operating system we really needed. And because we've moved to such a network-centric world that 90% of what you do with an operating system these days is open the browser. And you don't need a big, robust operating system to open the browser.
Well, look, my kid's favorite device that we have in our house is a Chromebook.
Yeah.
And all it is it's a browser.
Yes. And so that's why I'm torn about Windows 10. On the one hand, this is the operating system they should have released 5 years ago. And give them credit. It's like, okay, traditional Microsoft way of doing things. They eventually get it right. The downside, in my mind, is if they had gotten it right 5 years ago, we might be talking about a really different world, because we're talking about Windows 10 in the wild at around the same time that Microsoft has basically given up on the phone business.
Right.
The massive acquisition of Nokia, they've in effect said, only kidding, that $7 or $10 billion or whatever it was, we're writing that down. We're fundamentally getting out of the phone operating system and hardware business because it's seemingly a two-ish player race, iOS and Android, and we, Microsoft, really aren't making a go of it. And oh, by the way, our efforts in the OS are getting in the way of our properly supporting these other platforms because we're never going to beat them. So we've got to release our apps on these other platforms, or it threatens the Office platform.
So I bring to mind a bunch of questions. The first one I will ask is, what is the future? Because Windows 7 is that's the last desktop operating. What is the future of desktop operating systems?
I think if you look at what has Windows 10 brought us, in many ways, it's brought us a modern interface that is more mobile-like than anything we've ever seen on a desktop operating system. So in effect, what we're saying is mobility is the dominant platform now, and what we've got to do is go back to think of it, in some ways what we've got with the desktop computers and so on is our legacy systems. And so there's forever a market for upgrading your legacy platforms, to bring it the latest stability and security. So in a network-centric world, you certainly need to do things. If there are any network administrators watching, Patch Wednesday is probably their, most hated. It's their most hated day of the month. That you had a platform that was fundamentally insecure. It wasn't designed with network environment, and so every time a vulnerability was discovered, had to go through this whole process. And the answer is, there are a whole bunch of systems out there that are vulnerable because you can either fault Microsoft and say they had bad operating system design, or you can say, look, they designed it at a time when we weren't in this network connected world, and therefore it's not surprising that the architecture didn't anticipate all of this stuff. And they've been holding it together with chewing gum and baling wire, and they've finally, with 10, gotten around hopefully to an architecture that is more secure. I won't call it secure.
Right.
Yeah.
If it's plugged in, it's not secure.
Right.
And we'll talk about that. Well, there's two impacts here. There's a consumer and there's an enterprise. The consumer.
I'd add a third.
Okay.
The market. The question, and if I can ask myself the first question, is will Windows 10?
You can. Go ahead.
Yes. Will Windows 10 stimulate an upgrade cycle?
Right.
And the answer is no.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not like it requires more hardware resources. So it's not like people are going to say, wow, I want to run Windows 10. I need to upgrade my hardware platform to support it. Let's go buy new PCs. Right. I think it runs perfectly well on anything that was capable of running 7 and 8. So it doesn't stimulate an upgrade cycle that way. And in terms of new capabilities, the one thing that's interesting, there have been something on the order of north of 15 million downloads of Windows 10 already, which is pretty impressive as desktop OSs go. I imagine in the first weeks of any previous version of a Microsoft operating system, you've never even gotten hundreds of thousands of installs.
But they've never gotten given
away for free. It's amazing how free can stimulate demand. Right. Yeah.
So you asked your own question, but the question.
Now I'll take yours.
Yeah. So there's two aspects of it. From a consumer point of view, I've never been an Apple fanboy, but I've been recently introduced to the products, and 5 years ago, I spent the majority of my time on a desktop. Today, It's my desktop, it's a laptop, it's a tablet, it's a mobile device,
Yeah.
and I expect an another interoperability. Apple's done a really, some people say good job, some people say a scary job because it's a little bit too tightly connected.
I don't see this. I suppose I see the scary argument, but I think it's a wonderful thing.
Okay, so.
And Google does the same thing, or
But
Alphabet.
that leads me to, so right now, I'm on my
Notice
laptop.
I've attempted to say.
Yeah. Not yet, because this is an important thing. I want you to
Yes.
talk about this. So on my laptop, I get text messages.
Yes.
When I'm on my desktop, which is a Windows desktop, I now expect to be able to go look at my text messages, and I can't.
Oh, there are a whole bunch of things I want to be able to do on my desktop that I can't. Text messages, autocomplete. There are a whole bunch of things that.
That's right. You hit spacebar twice, you expect it to
Period. Yeah. There are a whole bunch of things that it's unfortunate, and this is Microsoft's missed opportunity in terms of if they had early enough had been able to develop synergies between the mobile and desktop platform in a way that both Google and Apple have been, they might have been more competitive. But even now, the desktop is a.
So does this mean, so is Microsoft now going to try to, because they're kind of done on mobile OS side.
Right.
Are they going to try to give me that experience on a consumer level?
That's, they better. I mean, if not, Satya Nadella is not as smart as everybody thinks. Of course they're going to. But the question is, at some level, what does that experience look like? So there are things that I think they're way behind the curve on. Some of that is the whole text entry experience. I'm a swipe user on my mobile platforms. And there are a variety of things I love about it, including its predictive typing ability, autocorrect, which makes for amusing mistakes from time to time, but probably saves more mistakes than it creates.
Right.
Even while, if you want to have fun today, it's lunchtime, you're sitting at the desk, go to damnyouautocorrect.com, and that is laugh out loud fun.
But there are plenty of times where I just had no idea. I'm not thinking about how to spell a word. I just start typing something.
Yes.
Close.
Yes, and I expect it.
And I expect to get it right.
Yes. So the desktop is still a long way away from that, and it also requires some change in mindset, because even Microsoft's mobile platforms didn't allow for keyboard replacements. Apple itself has only recently allowed that kind of thing because they thought it was so core to their experience that they wanted to control it, and they've now recognized that some of these third-party tools are really neat. Again, one of my favorite applications on a daily basis is Swipe. The text entry software on Android and now iOS that changed. It was the thing that weaned me away from keyboards on mobile devices. Before that, I loved my BlackBerry. I bought early Android phones that had keyboards. I bought third-party keyboards that attached to mobile phones. Along came Swipe, and I gave up on keyboards.
I really haven't used this one.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the enterprise side though. So what does Windows 10 mean for Microsoft and the enterprise?
At some level, first of all, we talked about 15 million downloads in the last week. Probably 14,953,000 of those were consumer. The enterprise just goes through this laborious evaluation process. That for good reason. They've got to see what breaks, what has operating system dependencies. There's a lot that goes on before an OS is declared. Yeah.
Consumers don't have a lot of custom software running on their
Right.
devices.
Do you have any?
No.
No. The last program I wrote was probably 15 years ago, unless you count IFTTT.
But what it means though is, so you have all this custom software that's out there, but it's going to have to be migrated. Is it changing the paradigm to become this is my opportunity to get it non-platform independent?
Well,
That's
that's
for Microsoft.
Yes, because that's always when you look at platform migrations, it puts things in play that weren't there otherwise.
Right.
The other thing with regard to the enterprise, so I'm not sure how much compelling there is to say, okay, I want to migrate this year, because there are no great breakthroughs in the platform. Yeah, there may be more robust security architecture, but that's unproven. And
I was at Westchester Medical Center
but
last week, and I
you saw
saw
Windows ME.
XP screen.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
And XP, that screen, that XP, that Windows XP screens.
yeah.
And in a lot of cases, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Right. And sometimes there's compelling reason to change. So for instance, when you go to a new interface paradigm, that's a good reason to change. Yes, this fixes some of the unfortunate elements of Windows 7 and 8, but they weren't so bad.
But if I'm a developer, I'm a development manager at a Fortune 500 company, and I have our custom software that's pushed out on all of our, and I'm thinking my 3-year strategy for my software. Am I thinking Windows 10 or am I thinking platform independence?
Well, that's an easy answer. These days, it's you don't have a homogeneous environment anymore. So yes, you are thinking multiple platform support. You're thinking cloud. So
then, what does this mean for Microsoft and the enterprise?
Oh, that's the interesting thing is. Does Windows 10 bring along Azure? Does Azure bring along Windows 10? Does any of this blunt Amazon Web Services?
And it's going to put Microsoft really more head to head with Google Forward.
Well, or I wouldn't say it would put, it's Google has been trying to penetrate the enterprise, for a long time. Does this blunt their initiatives?
So I think, I guess, was that the question? Nobody got fired for buying Microsoft as opposed to, trying something new. Let's go with our current vendor's new offering.
But this is where Microsoft, still having fixed the platform, there are a whole bunch of things that they need to do. I've been, in the last year or so, doing a lot more collaborative work with clients. It used to be the infernal Windows track changes, which, had to be invented by somebody who said, how confusing can we make this? Let's make it remarkably robust and capable, so robust and capable that nobody can figure out actually how to use it efficiently.
Right.
Where Google Docs has 1/10 of the functionality of track changes, but 98% of what I need to work effectively with inside and outside parties.
Right.
And in some ways, Google is using the Microsoft playbook on Microsoft, because Microsoft was never the best player. They were always the good enough player.
And they were also never the innovator, they were the duplicator.
Right. And good enough being the enemy of better. Google Docs is good enough, and so it's it's an interesting battle. But I think the broader question is, we've had some, as is always the case with end user computing, we've had some end user developments. We've brought in our mobile platforms, and now broadly we're looking at the confluence of mobile platforms and cloud computing, and organizations are starting to say, what is my overall architectural strategy for embracing the cloud, supporting and enabling and empowering mobile platforms? And that's, in my mind, the fascinating battle more broadly. So we've got everybody out there now with pieces of their platform plays. Who's got holes, who's going to fill in the holes. Hence, you look at this Apple-IBM partnership, and you think, who would have ever thought that? What are they doing together?
Right.
And they're both filling in holes in the platform.
So if you're going to give Microsoft a letter grade for Windows 10, A to F.
I can't give it more than a B-. If I were looking at it on the quality of the platform, I'd give it a solid A, A-. where I fault them is, it's too late to matter. It's a platform in search of a need, and
And speaking of letters,
yeah, good say.
and
ABC.
no, we have to be abject, which is the most.
Your kids are younger than mine. That's so.
No,
Yeah.
I don't even think that they do that on Sesame Street.
Oh, yeah.
But that's big.
Which, by the way, is now going to HBO.
Yeah.
Which is, we've made another seg to come later.
A sub-segue, or do that, what do they call that? That's foreshadowing.
Yes.
That's foreshadowing. Or no, we're teasing.
Yes.
Maybe it's teasing, okay. So, Alphabet. Well, first of all, let me start by saying, full disclosure, Google Capital is investor in Freshdesk.
Oh, okay.
So I have to I put that. But
Yeah. Full disclosure, I use Android. Yeah.
And I can spell
And Google hasn't invested in me.
Yeah.
Although if they want to sponsor this show,
Yes.
the check payable.
But here's the first thing I don't understand. Alphabet.com
Yes,
is
it was owned by BMW.
in the 21st century. How could you not do how could you not get the
Own the domain name.
on the
That's what
domain
they're trying to do.
before you launch a product, launch a company, launch anything?
Well, I think the answer to that is a several-fold interesting question that I will grossly overanalyze.
Well, let me first start by saying Google's market, the market cap for Google is 450 billion. The market cap for BMW is 56 billion. I think they'll find a solution.
Yes, but first of all, so the fact that they don't own Alphabet.com, who cares? Because this isn't the core business. All of the stuff that's under Alphabet are the subcomponents that people care about. So Google.com is still there and where most of us will go. In fact, I think from a user perspective, this is a non-event.
So,
Financial analysts care, we have fun with it.
I'm going to start you off with a statement. Crazy, brilliant, or both?
Or neither.
Or neither.
It's a non-event. What did they do? There are a couple of things they did. They basically said, we've got all these ancillary businesses that are distractions from what we really do and how we really make money. So let us carve off the business that pays for everything and keep it in a separate company. And let's put all of those other moonshot ideas into a separate company to please Wall Street. And this is largely a Wall Street activity, probably secondarily an EC antitrust activity. Let's get these crazy businesses out of the way. What to me is more interesting, in some ways, is the fact that they passed Google off to the new CEO, and Larry and Sergey, have stayed with moonshot company.
Right. Well, but also answers the question, who's going to be the next CEO of Google?
Yes. Yes, it has been answered.
Yep.
And in a good way, because I think, Google has this wonderful position, but there are a whole bunch of things where they are facing challenges now like they've never before, and their innovation in the core product has been limited.
Right.
When you talk about Google innovation, we've always, people would point to self-driving cars and solving intractable health problems and so on, but none of that replaced the fact that 90% of their business is selling the space next to search results.
Right. So what they've done is basically, they've always had probably the separation internally. That's how they've thought about it. All they're doing is saying to the market, I want you to think about it the way we think about it.
Yes. And oh, by the way, we're maybe had a management bandwidth issue. And what we really need is somebody driving the Google bus. And we've identified the bus driver. It's now somebody's full-time job rather than several guys' part-time job. And so, I look at it, Wall Street cares, and I guess liked the results.
Right.
For those of us, I think if I wanted to paint the optimistic view, it's okay. Google recognizes that its core business, while remarkably strong franchise and not under imminent danger, is being threatened by things. Facebook video is challenging YouTube. There are other platforms that are seeking to be commerce enabled, from Twitter to Pinterest and so on, that change the notion of search. And so Google needs to come up with that next thing. They've had a wonderful, whatever it is, 10, 12-year run. I'm not saying it's in imminent danger, but 10, 12 years from now, right, search is going to look at all the way we do it today, at all. And they're behind that evolution.
And it's the entry points for search are changing.
Oh, totally.
And they're not all, I wouldn't say owned by Google, that's not, but they're not all accessible.
That's why
to Google.
Google now, to me, is the most exciting thing they've done in years. And if you're not familiar with Google now, it's on the Android platform.
So in other words, if you use Apple products,
well, Apple's coming up with its own version of it, and Google will try
right,
to penetrate the Apple platform to the extent it can. But right, what Google now does is it tries to surface things that you might be interested in before you think to search for them. Because I always think search represents a failure of the platform. When I go to look for a piece of information, how come the platform didn't think that I wanted that piece of information? Wouldn't it be? And this to me is Microsoft.
You got to repeat that, because I think that's probably
profound.
It may be a smart thing that you said, and I want to make a note of that.
but search.
No. Search. This
represents a failing.
Search represents a failing of the platform because it should have anticipated what your need was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you imagine
absolutely,
if Microsoft had ever built into Word? Let's say you're typing and you type Google's revenue in 2014 was, and you stop typing. Why didn't the platform think, I'll bet he's going over to the browser now and searching, what Google's revenue is.
Right.
And populate it right in the document right then and there.
It's context.
Yes.
But context does not translate across applications, let alone platforms now.
That's correct. But context is really difficult. But Google is spending large amounts of money trying to understand context. There are a whole bunch of things you type now into your browser bar. It used to give you search results.
Right.
A lot of those instances now, Google is trying to come up with the answer so that, yes, you've got all the search results, but if you go, exchange rate, dollar, yuan.
No, I do this all the time. If I see a new company, I want to know what market they're in. I'll say company name versus.
Yes.
And it'll just start prompting me for all the possible searches that I might do. And that gives me,
So that context and anticipatory search, things you might be interested in, not just generically, but now based on what I know you're doing and what I know about you, to me is very much the next frontier. And and this is a big leap, but if this Google reorg enables them to better focus on the kinds of things they need to do to advance their platforms, to we've had I won't call it the shutdown of Google Plus, but the de-emphasis of Google Plus, while rather Google tries to figure out what its real approach to social should be. That there are a couple of things. They need to figure out social, they need to figure out this anticipatory search. And
right,
if this reorg gives them more management focus and more nimbleness, even while Google corporate remains a large entity, then this is a good move on their part. It was inevitable, and I think
so a letter grade for Google.
ABC, easiest. I'll stop singing, I promise.
So,
But no, I'll give this one a C plus from the perspective. It's a really good thing to do,
but it's
who
not,
cares?
but it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So, moving to social, actually, I have to say that I've been awaiting the presidential election season with eager anticipation.
Yeah.
Eager anticipation. And one of my favorite things to do is to watch the debates while connecting on Twitter.
Yes, which, by the way, I agree. It's a really interesting phenomenon for those of us who are so inclined. It used to be we do things like go to viewing parties.
Right.
Now,
right. Super Bowl, Oscars, whatever.
I don't want 6 people around. I want 600 or 600.
Not only that, but I get my whole family. I'm like, I'm going to be watching the debate. Go away. I'm sitting here with my laptop and I'm watching. Don't talk to me because I got to concentrate. I got to keep up with the conversation.
This is an interesting paradox when social technologies make you antisocial.
Or they could just amplify what you already are.
Yeah.
Isn't that what they usually say?
Amplify or expose.
Expose.
Yes.
No, so the interest, and that in itself that's an amazing experience, and that is creating discussions. But the thing for me though is that this is the first presidential election that really is going to require presidential candidates to be effective on social.
Well, one could make the argument that Obama's elections demonstrated that, because you could make the argument the reason why he won is
See, that's different. He had an early adopter's advantage,
yes.
and no one else was there, and he won the battle because no one was there. Now I'm talking about the fact that he
pointed out the need.
He pointed out that, but now everybody has to be there, and just watching. But watch, it's amusingly painful.
Oh, how some of them don't own their domain names,
or just not understanding. They try to be like interesting and funny on Twitter, but it comes off as awkward and embarrassing. And but it's real. That this is another place they have to have a conversation, and it's not some place that you can't staff it out.
No.
That's where you're going to lose.
Oh, that's where you can make horrible mistakes and people get fired. And have been fired. Yeah.
But it's requiring them to connect and to communicate in a way that maybe takes them off at their game, because it's not your stump speech, it's not your talking points.
And oddly, perhaps the oldest candidate in the race, Bernie Sanders, may be the most effective social media participant, and not because he's necessarily so good at it, but his followers are so good at it. And that's an interesting one.
Right.
The stuff that he should and must and all that kind of stuff, figure out how to exploit and capitalize on it, maybe. Or there are times, your best strategy is to let it go, because if you get involved, you're going to screw it up.
Well, look, brands know this. Brands are learning this, that it lets your community step in and talk for you, or talk to each other and defend you.
I think you're making a broad, sweeping statement. Some brands have figured that out.
Well, brands at least are aware of it. They may not be good at it yet.
Or may not believe in it. We've had this discussion before. The notion that brands, that users control the brand, brands don't control the brand. I think every CMO out there pays lip service to that, and most of them do not believe it.
So I got to talk about multi-channel, multi-communication. So I got a chat message here on a Facebook Messenger from our good friend Bob Egan. And he says, will social really matter? Gore won the popular vote, but lost the election. What's different now?
No. Well, what's different now, or what's the same, is, and we don't see this here, living in the blue state metro area. There are probably only 2 states that are going to determine this election again: Ohio and Florida. And
which Al Gore knows all too well.
Yes, but very much so. Which is why, interestingly, I think if the Republicans nominate Jeb Bush and have Kasich be the vice presidential candidate, somebody from Florida, somebody from Ohio, if that carries the swing states. So, but what I think
It's not going to
has,
be Donald Trump and Carly with the vice VP of Carly Fieri.
or Mark Cuban. Did you?
No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, there was an interview in the last couple of days where Mark Cuban indicated, perhaps tongue-in-cheek, that he'd be interested in being Donald Trump's vice president. Mark has found the one person who is more outspoken than him. But what I think is different about social, and Bob, don't take this personally, but you're at least as old as me. And what matters in elections? I was just watching the Bloomberg politics show last night, and they were talking about Trump's challenge from tapping into people who indicate they like him in polls, to actually working for his candidacy, getting the vote out. And that getting the vote out thing is always what makes the difference.
But and isn't that where social can be a game changer?
Exactly. That's my point. That's what's changed. That you have increasing portions of the electorate that can be reached and motivated through engagement to, when it comes to election day.
So here's a micro version of that. Every year, school districts vote on their budget. So you can't have a more local election than your school district budget vote. The day went by and I totally forgot about it. And then somebody posted on Facebook, "Hey, did you vote today?"
Yeah.
And I saw that. I went out and voted.
Yeah.
I forgot, but that was a connection that I get no other way.
Yes, but I think so much of it is still such a large portion of the electorate does not turn out to vote. That the challenge of all of this polling stuff, when you ask somebody who they vote for, we don't have a good idea of who's actually going to go to the poll today. Or a lot of people can do it in advance now and/or electronically. But I think getting out the vote is such an important element of determining who wins, that the people who use social technologies can reach an increasing portion of the electorate, and that's A, what's different, and B, why it's so important. That it's how do you mobilize people. The issues discussion will take place a lot. We'll watch debates, we'll talk to our friends, but that last mile element of getting people out to vote and making them feel motivated.
But there's an interesting thing about being effective on Twitter. It makes people feel that they understand you. So there was a great
or sometimes makes them feel, who is that?
No, but there was this great interplay between Bill Clinton and Obama about the POTUS, about the POTUS Twitter handle, and so does that come? It comes with the office, and is there a POTUS husband? So, but that's a new style of communication, and I think that candidates who can be on the forefront of that and get it, I think that could be a really big difference maker for them in terms of their effectiveness in getting their message out and getting the vote out.
Yeah, it's the modern version. What do politicians do? They go shake hands and kiss babies.
No, it's the modern version of Nixon sweating on the debate with Kennedy.
Well, there's that too. Yes.
That's what
there's
it is.
the negative side, and there's the positive side. Because at the end of the day, the reason why they shake hands and kiss babies is when you forge that personal connection. It's like, wow, I shook that person's hand. They may be an idiot, but I know them. They're the idiot I know.
Which pretty much sums up presidential politics. Okay, we're done. A couple of rapid fire topics.
Yes.
Columbia House.
Those of you under the age of about 30 probably don't know what Columbia House was, but there were two great days in a kid's life. When you got your Columbia House subscription and you got like 7 albums for a penny.
Yeah.
And then that moment when you canceled the subscription because they realized how they hoodwinked you, the seven.
Well, when you got the 3 albums of the month that you didn't
forgot
want
to return,
right.
yeah, for the refund, yeah. You know, but you know what staggered me, you know, this is a company that as recently as 20 years ago did $1.4 billion. Billion.
How many years ago?
1996.
1996. Okay.
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Yeah, which not coincidentally was kind of right around the introduction of the internet, you know, and all of a sudden we started obtaining our music in different ways. You know, and this is a perfect example. You know, they're kind of the buggy whip company. You know, they were wedded to a business model that was direct mail of physical distribution, you know, of physical media,
right? And
never saw the internet coming, never reacted to it. Could they have been the Spotify or whatever? You know, and the answer is, if they thought they were in the music distribution business rather than, you know, a subscription club, you know, and the net result, their revenue last year, you know, and they declared bankruptcy, their revenue last year was $15 million. None of it from music. They exited the music business about 4 years ago. So they go from, you know, $1.5 billion to zero.
All the icons of my youth are disappearing.
Yeah.
This is so sad.
Next thing you're going to tell me Radio Shack, isn't it?
News in the media world, ESPN.
Yeah, ESPN's announced a couple of things. One, slowing subscriber growth. And boy, did that send shockwaves through the television industry, because ESPN has been the darling. You know, they're the reason why you get a cable subscription.
And they're the reason why you
pay so much.
You pay extra for to get the out of market teams.
Yes, but even just, you know, the ESPN tax, you know, for cable companies, because you and I would get ESPN almost no matter what they charge.
My Marco Rubio money.
Yeah, would get it almost no matter what they charge for it. But there are a lot of people who it's like, if they knew that ESPN was costing them $15 a month on their cable bill, they'd say, "What are you, out of your mind? I don't want it. I don't need it. I never watch it."
Right.
You know. Number two, you know, and the net result, a lot of the media companies, when ESPN announced slower subscriber growth and in fact some defections, media companies all over got hammered, because it's kind of like, if ESPN is being impacted by these cord cutters, you know, what's safe? And at the same time, ESPN announced, you know, it was considering a DTC, direct-to-consumer channel, so that, you know, if you want ESPN and only ESPN, you don't have to go buy from the cable company. You can get it directly from ESPN. So, you know, shockwaves through the industry, and at the same time, we've got this HBO deal with Sesame Street. We've got
your guys,
the Top Tier guys,
announced
a $250 million deal with Amazon.
Talk about a niche market.
Yeah, but it's interesting when you look what's happened, you know, and it should happen to us doing this. You know,
yes, we should say it again. You always repeat really important.
Yes, yes. It should happen to us. Anybody wants to, you don't even have to write us at $250 million. Can I speak for you?
And you can speak for me.
25 million will get the job. Yeah.
Even 20.
Yeah.
20, I would do 20.
Each. Yeah, but you know, you look at what's happened, and people with followings. David Pogue goes from being, you know, a New York Times reporter and just one of many, establishes an independent brand and sells himself as a free agent.
Right.
You know, that the whole notion of media outlets as brand makers, you know, is now under challenge from independents who, having built an audience through the mass distribution of the channel, you know, can basically say to the channel, "I don't need you anymore. You know, I can do better, you know, with a Netflix and HBO and an Amazon and, you know, and other Yahoo, AOL, you know, and other emerging independent content plays." You know, NBC Universal just invested $250 million into Vox Media. You know, it's got a few recode is one of the,
Right.
and all because the big, the previous owners of the pipe and the big content providers are now realizing that the ability for people to build independent brands that bring large audiences with them, exists.
All right, another quick topic. And we always talk about mobile, and Verizon is decided to cancel their
they're the last ones.
contract policy.
Yeah, they're the last ones. So those of us who have lived with the subsidized phones and the 2-year upgrades, those are going the way of the dodo bird, and the telcos basically.
So what does this mean for phone manufacturers?
I actually can make an argument that it's better for them. And from, because what they're enabling, it used to be, you sat there and said, when is my 2-year period up? When is my 2-year period up? Now, you've got an option to buy newer devices quicker. And I think one of the
but it's going to be the perception is going to be a higher cost.
Yeah, but you amortize it over your month. Actually, I think there could be a perception that it's lower cost, because now when you want to buy a new phone,
it's an extra $25 a month.
Yes, with that way. Whereas before I had to pay $299, $199, whatever the number is based on the phone. So it's going to cost me less up front. Number two, there's already a robust and will be an increasingly robust secondary market. It's amazing what you can get for your phone. So, I'm a Samsung Note 4 user. Samsung has just launched the Note 5 and Galaxy S6 Plus, and I got an email from Samsung yesterday basically saying, upgrade and we guarantee you at least $200 trade-in on your existing phone. So I think,
but it's going to make most consumers don't realize how much devices really cost.
Right.
They think their iPhone costs $100, and it's like, no, your iPhone costs $700.
Yeah, which is actually kind of shocking when you think about it.
I can buy I can buy
a laptop for half the price. Right. Yeah. And you can buy a tablet for less.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but that's why I was concerned about, not concerned, but that's what made me think about the impact on consumers, because they're going to finally realize how much these things cost. Will it drive the price of these devices down?
But I'm not sure they'll realize how much they cost, because,
it's just like a lease. They don't know how much a car costs. I love it. They always say, how much you want to pay per month?
Yeah, that's exactly.
And it's a subscription. I'm going to get a subscription to a device.
When you go to buy a phone, nowadays through these new plans, what number do you see? $29.95. You don't see, in really small print, if you take out your magnifying glass, you see the fact that it's really going to cost you $700. But, some of it, I think, look at the things we subscribe to now. The whole subscription world is a dramatic and powerful transition that I don't think is wholly appreciated. We're starting to subscribe to music. My son subscribes to razor blades. There are subscriptions for diapers. There are subscriptions, for your prescription refills. I've got a subscription to my car wash guy. It's $29.95 a month, unlimited car washes, rather than paying $15 or $10 each time I go in. And the subscription model is a really powerful and great one for the vendors, because Brent
Leary would be so happy to hear you saying this stuff.
Well, is he watching?
I don't know.
Hi, Brent. Yeah.
We'll have to make sure he is.
Yeah, but look at the things we're increasingly subscribing to. Microsoft Office, you can buy the packaged version, or you can subscribe to Office. You can subscribe to software. What can't you subscribe to these days?
We just got a question.
And if we answer that, let's. Yeah.
We just got a question from another friend of the show, our friend Fred McCline. Freddie Mac says, will this change the way consumers buy their mobile? Well, he used the word. He has an autocorrect buy that's incorrect. I'll point that out. Consumers buy their mobile devices, alternatives to their provider. Meaning, will there be? I guess, will you buy your device? Will it separate?
Yes.
That's a good question.
In fact, I forget the name of the phone, but the hot phone of last year was a carrier-independent phone.
Right.
That was, great hardware, reasonably priced, and they've just launched the new upgrade. Google played around with that for a little while with its Nexus phones. And we're already increasingly in a world where you're looking for devices that are unlocked, carrier independent. My son, as I mentioned, he's going over to Israel 2 weeks for his birthright trip, and he borrowed my, rather than international roaming, I've got a Windows Mobile phone from way back that he wanted to borrow as his backup device, and all he did was take out my SIM card, put in his SIM card, and
right.
And it worked. So yes, I think this is increasingly going to lead to the divorce of the device from carrier tie-ins, and if that liberates creativity in the phone business, because first of all, the manufacturers would love that. Right now, the things they have to do to jump hoops to get things certified in carriers, and they all want to put their individual crapware on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Or
all right.
bloatware.
So we're coming up on time here, Jonathan. I wanted to get to some of our regular stuff.
Okay.
So we've got a pet peeve, we got a shame on you, we have an interesting factoid and a quote of the month, and we have 4 minutes.
Good. So, the pet peeve.
Yeah.
And this is one, somebody may be on the cusp of solving a pet peeve.
Yeah.
The pet peeve was printer ink. It's amazing what that stuff costs.
It's liquid gold.
In fact, one of the things, if it weren't such a nuisance, if you look at what a ink replacement costs you, you could buy a new printer oftentimes for the cost of your price, but then you've got to reinstall drivers and everything like that. But the ink, HP, if you look at that company, and one could make the argument that we think of them as a computer manufacturer and all of this kind of stuff. They were really an ink company.
But there's a kudo wrapped in this pet peeve.
Yes, the kudo is Epson. Epson has announced they're going to launch a device. Number one, it comes with an inkwell that starts out with a 4,000 page capacity, which for the typical user represents multiple years of usage. And then when you draw down the inkwell, you buy a replacement can or whatever and refill the inkwell. And it's like the entire industry. I appreciate, because if you remember when Dell entered the printer business, they entered it with this, the ink monopoly is crazy and it's got to break, and we're going to be the ones to break it.
They just created their own.
And then they realized there's a lot of money to be made in this stupid stuff.
All right.
But Epson, I think, can bring about some change, and I think it's exciting.
Shame on you. No, I meant.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, okay, Jonathan Jonas. This is one. Nobody ever reads the fine print except idiots like you and me. So I got a solicitation for Princess Cruises contest the other week, and I read the fine print. And in the fine print, it said, by entering this contest, you submit to being telemarketed to. It's not only are we going to send you email, we are going to call you, and we're going to be able to share your information with third parties so they can call you too. Yeah. And oh, by the way, that's something, the no-call list, something like that circumvents the no-call list. You opted into being called, and you
didn't even know about it. But look, there's no free lunch. All right, you got a couple of interesting factoids.
Yeah.
You want to pick one, or just
two.
All right, two. Okay.
Apple's market cap, between some slowing in Apple Watch and the yuan devaluation that is making Apple products more expensive in China, Apple's market capitalization in the last month is down over $100 billion.
In a month.
$100 billion. Somewhere I should have looked up the fact there probably aren't 15 companies in the world that are valued market cap $100 billion, and Apple is down $100 billion. And related to market cap, Amazon. has been on a roll lately. You know, they're actually showing, maybe someday in the next 17 years, they'll be able to show a profit. Their market capitalization.
Apparently profit is overrated.
Yeah, but their market capitalization is now larger than that of Walmart.
I remember looking on the Forbes, billionaires, and it was always the Walmart, and that's so last century. All right, quote of the month.
They're still pretty rich.
Quote of the month.
I'm a car guy. I like racing. And interestingly, I think there's a great quote from Mario Andretti that applies to racing, but I think it equally, if not more so, applies to business. If everything seems under control, you're not going fast enough. I gave a speech in the early days of the internet. I was brought in by a large defense contractor who thought the internet was a great commercial opportunity, and they wanted me to rally the troops and get them excited about it. And I'm there talking about speed. And during the Q&A, this gentleman, who was probably about 2 weeks from retirement, raises his hand, and the first question he asked was, how will we know when we're going too fast? And I hated throwing him under the bus, but the opportunity he presented me was too good. And I looked at him with all sincerity and said, trust me, that won't be your problem. That's a shame on you.
Oh, that's a shame on you.
Yeah. And the other quote from the science fiction author, Robert Heinlein: always listen to experts. They'll tell you what can't be done and why. Then you should go do it.
That's an excellent summation for the show today, Jonathan. So this has been Alan Berkson. I'm Alan Berkson, and Jonathan Yarmus, Dr. Disruptive. We are here the second Friday of every month. Our next show will be Friday, September 11th. We'll have to have some interesting themes for that show. And so thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next month.